Okay, it's like take 4 now. Welcome to my, and now I don't know where to look either. Now I'm looking like, where's my camera? Um, Welcome to my love-hate relationship with technology. So this idea, come home to go big, it's something I've been playing with for probably about a year now. And I remember there was some moment where I heard that saying. And if you're watching, hello, please give me a little, okay, hi Mandy, tell me if I'm not loud enough. Sometimes I hear that I don't talk loud enough on these. Okay. Okay. So this idea of come home to go big really came from that phrase, which I imagine all of you have heard a million times, which is go big or go home. And there was a way that it always kind of like felt very jarring to me physically. Actually, when I would hear it, was kind of like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it right, or I'm not big enough, or but it was a long time before I really like took enough time to kind of tease out like, well, what is going on there? What is actually impacting me? What is this all about? And some of you may follow me on Instagram, and I have the hashtag, come home to go big. And it came from my kind of working with this piece. And the first piece that came up with for me was, frankly, I love being at home. So even the idea that somehow like go home was like a punishment just didn't register well for me. I thought like, I mean, I've always loved home, and I love my home now, and that's important to me in my life, is like this idea that why in the world would I ever create my home to be a place that I didn't want to go back to? So there was just a disconnect in that for me. And then also really this piece of, I would say all the work that I've ever done, both just personally for myself, and then every piece of work that I've created or put out into the world really comes down fundamentally to this idea that you are okay. Like there is the space that you hold in the world beyond just being okay. Like that's a sacred space. The space, the actual exact shape of you, the physical space, the energetic space, the creative space, like who you are is actually needed. It's meant. It's you got born into this realm. And when I say on purpose or for a reason, I don't know. I'm not even sure what I believe around that in the cosmic sense. Like whether there's a plan or karma or any, I'm not even sure. So I'm not really asserting that, but I believe that you have a place in this world, and I believe that it is you. Like you don't have a place, like there's some place you need to get or some person you need to become. That actually who you got born into this world as it is essential to this world. Theo says, we called it space matters. I like that. So for me, that also is, first of all, who's going to judge, right? Like the go big or go home. Who judges what's big enough? Whether I'm big enough or my creation in the world is big enough. Have I claimed enough space? Did I dream big enough? Like, who gets to say? So So this piece also about then come home to go big, for me it means, first of all, it means come back to who you truly are. And from there, you will go exactly as big as you need to, as you want to, as you're meant to be. But one part of that, you know, I think about just to be honest, I'm gonna stop trying to find the camera because when I do that, I can't tell what's happening. So I apologize that it looks like I'm looking like up into the whatever, but I can't figure the technology out. So it means come back to who you truly are. And to me, when I like home, yes, it's your actual home space. For some people that matters more than others. Like that matters a lot to me. But I also believe that we're born into the realm of bodies. And if our bodies didn't matter at all, we wouldn't be born into the realm of bodies. Thanks, Jeannie. And thanks, Mandy. I'm glad. And I don't mean that in the sense that like how you look matters or whether you're, you know, you identify with the gender you were born as or the sex or, I just mean like this is the realm we're born into. And so to me, home also means like this body, this being, the one that actually resides here where I'm sitting or where I'm standing or where I'm walking. And what does it mean to come home to that? And to me, that's why the body matters so much, is it actually gives us a place to come back to. Outside of that, I mean, certainly my beliefs and my thoughts and my expression matter, but it can be very conceptual until we just go like, okay, who is this being that lives here? What does she want? What does she believe? And I think a lot about, like with a map, if I'm not actually willing to say, you know, we get out, what do? We get out our phones and we're like, you know, tell me how to get to this place. And every once in a while, I don't know if this happens for you guys, but every once in a while, my little like GPS on my phone tells me that I'm somewhere other than where I am. And then it gives me directions from that place to where I want to go. And it's like super not helpful. And I think so many of us spend so much time or big parts of our lives saying like, hey, if I was here, this is how I would get there, rather than saying like, I'm actually here. And there is absolutely no way to create a map to where I want to go unless I'm willing to say where I actually start from. Or we have that very weird like GPS telling us to go from here to here, but it's not where we are. And that's certainly true in the realm of like actual goals, right? Like if I want to create this kind of a life or have this kind of a relationship or make this much money, if I'm not willing to say like, well, this is actually what my relationship is like or has been like, or this is what it actually feels like to be in my body now, or this is how much money I make right now, like then we can't build or create an accurate map. So just in the structural, logistical side, like our capacity to acknowledge where am I really now, like to come home to where I am now is what gives us the capacity to even create, whether it's a detailed map or whether it's just the trajectory, to even be able to have a trajectory towards where we think we want to be is, oh, thanks, Allison. This is like my favorite color, is that we have to be willing to say, this is where I am now. In response to Red, Oh, I have to scroll back. Do we always know where we are, where home is? No, I don't think we do. I'm actually going to touch at the very end on what I consider to be some really valuable practices around that, because that is one of the big pieces. So, the first piece I would say about this, and I'm going to post a link to a TED Talk that I watched about this the other day, which is really this idea of what does it mean to be you? But I would say, well, maybe this goes into the realm of practices. So you're all getting to watch me real time where I have an idea and I think, oh, I want to talk about that. And I write a little bit of notes and then I start talking and I'm like, wait, where am I now? So even in real time, it's like, okay, where am I now and where do I want to go? I think the piece that is really, one piece that's really important to me is that I don't believe that we ever have to leave ourselves in order to create in the world. And there's something about go big or go home that to me, the way it landed was like I had to like jump out of myself into something else. And what I want about the reframe of come home to go big is that I believe that there is nothing that we have to leave ourselves in order to become or create. That it may not look like what we think we should create, or it might not look like what anyone else becomes in the world, but what will actually come from the act of continually returning to oneself and saying, doesn't mean that I never compromise or that I'm unwilling to learn and that I don't change in that process, but that there's an unwillingness to like leave myself in order to ... whatever it is. That what is actually created from the space of always coming back to oneself is, I believe that will always be more beautiful and more powerful than anything we could create from a place of outside of ourselves or rejecting a part of ourselves. So I was with a group and my coach was leading, and he told this story. I totally should have gotten this story before I did this, but he told a story about a particular flower that can only be pollinated by one particular insect. And it's like the way that the flower is built, it's actually structured. It literally cannot be pollinated. There's no other insect that can either get in or like touch the place that the pollen is, except for this one bee. And what happens is that this particular bee comes and it normally flutters its wings at a certain rate. And then, but when it comes in contact with this one particular flower, something shifts and it starts flapping its wings at a different rate. And this is amazing to me. It actually creates a note, like almost like a musical note. And I think in the story that he told, and I will now find this story and I'll link to it in the comments, some version of it. It's like what we would call a C note. And the C note literally impacts part of the flower such that it opens just enough for this bee to go in, to pollinate, and then to leave. And I believe that we actually all have a particular note. And I don't mean that we all have a particular outward manifestation, like what we're meant to do in the world, but as long as we do what we do, playing our particular note, the flowers that are meant to open will open. Let me just check. Theo just said, the story sounds awesome as long as you're talking about inner exploration and not putting head under the pillow. And then home is the best place to be. I can't see the whole comment because of the way technology works. Yes, I absolutely agree that this isn't about putting our head under their pillows. And this is, I've talked about this before, and I'll continue to talk about it because it's incredibly important, which is that this is the place where I would say authenticity and habit bump heads. So many people will equate habit with authenticity. And it's something like, well, that just doesn't feel like me, or like that doesn't feel authentic. And there's sort of a like, well, I can't do that because it doesn't feel authentic, basically. And there are some things that are like that. Like an example actually is when I was having my website redone, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, and I would meet with my website designer, and what I loved about him was that he would listen to what I wanted, and then he would create art out of it. So he would create something that was beyond anything I could create. And it pushed me to, so this is the not putting one's head under the pillows, like me putting myself out there, like having my website redone. That would be an easy place for me to say like, well, that's just not me. I don't need a website, that's just not me. But that's just pushing against my habits around being seen. But he would say to me, well, industry standard is this, or, you really should have a pop-up here or an opt-in sort of. And I just cringed. Literally, if I go to a website and I can't get to the rest of the website unless I opt in for a free gift, I will leave that website. I'm not saying people shouldn't do that. I'm saying that's my visceral response. Like, I don't like it. Or else I have to have had like an incredibly strong and deep experience of that person such that I want the thing that they offer or something like that. But there are things, there's so much like noise and movement on on internet, and it's jarring to my system. And I wanted to create a website that resonated with what matters to me. So I actually wanted, if somebody goes, you can tell me, I've gotten feedback that I succeeded, but you tell me what you think. So my website is just kendracunov.com, but I wanted, if people went there, that it actually felt like more calm and still. Like I wanted it to feel like me. And so I didn't care what the industry standard was, or that I might not get everybody's email address, that I'd miss out on getting people's email addresses because I didn't create it's called a squeeze page. What a horrible name. And so I think of that as one of the like come home to go big. I was like, well, if going big means I have to like create a squeeze page, I don't want to go big. I would rather go home. And for me, that's not about putting my head under the pillow. That's about like a deep, visceral response. Like I will not only live my life, but I will run my business as the natural extension of my life in a way that is true to, you could call it your values. For me, it's a very visceral response. So again, all the work that I do is embodied. And that's my own personal path in the world. So for me, the visceral response really matters. I could feel it was like, and my website designer would come back and I would be like, oh, yes. Like I would have a visceral response. That's me. Did it still feel totally edgy to like publish my website and put it out there and like say, this is who I am in the world? Absolutely. But it came from deeply, deeply connected to who I am and how I feel, and then wanting people who came there to actually, like, hopefully it would feel like touching me, like similar to having a face-to-face conversation. And so that's the come home to go big, is like, can every step of the way, doesn't have to be comfortable, it doesn't have to be easy, but is there a way that like actually it can all feel like you, so that you know that each step, and this is true in, I remember, this is a funny example. Hi, David. Because I'm not dating this person, but it was really important to me about, gosh, this is like forever ago now, maybe even 15 years ago or more, 17 years ago. I was single and I was dating, and I was like really into this guy, and he was successful and he was like really cute, and anyway, I just thought he was like totally the bee's knees, and we had fun together, and then I remember he invited me on a date to play Scrabble. He was like, let's get together and play Scrabble, and inside I went like but externally my first impulse was to be like, yeah, like I want to do whatever you want to do. And I caught myself, and what I realized is, like, it's not that we could never play Scrabble or that I can't do things that are hard, but what I realized is I feel stupid when I play Scrabble and I don't enjoy it. And rather than either saying that or some other version, I was just going to jump outside of myself and say like, whatever you want to do, you know, so I can hang out with like cute, successful, you know, lawyer guy. And, instead, I can't remember exactly, but I basically wrote him back and I was like, I would totally love, you know, to go on another date with you. I don't love Scrabble. Like, you know, can we play blah, 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 and maybe dominoes? Or I was like, can we do something else instead? Or is there another way we can hang out? And so I think about this in relationship, which again, doesn't mean that we never compromise or we never say like, wow, you really want to do that thing? Like, I love you, so I'll meet you there. But it means knowing that we're doing that as a conscious choice, and we're not just like jumping outside of ourselves because that's what we would have to do to be connected to this person. Or in business, like, well, I guess I have to jump outside of myself and create a squeeze page because that's what everyone does. Like, don't do what everyone does unless it feels really good to you. So I know this has been a bit rambly, and I was really hoping it would be a little more focused. I hope that there's some nuggets in there that landed. And I do want to hit some practices that are, some of them are a little more abstract and some of them are really specific, but that I believe will support you in this idea of come home. It's really around the idea of come home first. And honestly, I believe as long as we're willing to feel uncomfortable, the go big part will happen. Is put yourself in the space of people who will, people who love you enough to see your bigness in whatever form is true for you, and then focus on the come home part, and the go big part will take care of itself. So, number one, thanks, Mandy. Thanks for reassuring me about that. Number one is you have to get quiet enough to hear. Somebody earlier asked this question, actually, like, do we always know what home is? And no, I think many of us don't. And it's completely normal and natural to like get thrown off center or not know at different points of the day or throughout the week, or like to have moments or phases of our life where we're searching. The tricky part is, especially when we're searching, or if we feel confused, it can be so easy to think like, well, I got to just keep doing and doing and doing because that's how something will happen. And those times, maybe more than any other, are the times that it is most important to get quiet and to get still. I was in a moment like that on Tuesday, and I was talking to a dear friend and a mentor of mine. And I said to him, I was like, will you please just reassure me that it's all going to be okay? And da 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 da. And I was going really fast. And he was like, slow down, stop. I'm going to give you a practice. I was like, okay. And he said, today you're going to set aside 30 to 45 minutes to sit on your couch or in the most comfortable place in your home, and you will do nothing. Not journal, not meditate, not, organize the junk drawer or something. Like, sit there and you will do nothing. And then whatever you choose to do from that place will come from a deeper place. And thank God I trust him enough that I said, yes, I will do that. Even though I felt like I had 10 million things to do and not enough time and my mind was racing. And so I sat myself on my couch and I said, can I have a notebook in case I need to write something down? And he said, you can have a notebook, but you don't do anything unless it comes from inspiration. There's no writing in it or movement from obligation. I didn't write a single thing in my notebook. And I sat on the couch, and I sat so that I was facing, looking out the window. I set 30 minutes on my phone and I set it aside, and I literally sat there. And whenever I would want to move, I would pause for a minute and I would feel like, am I moving to get away from something, or am I moving to actually be more fully here? And then if the right thing to do was to shift my position, I would shift my position. And so that's one way to do it. But I would say in general, this idea, you have to get quiet enough to hear. The world is really fucking loud. It's loud out there. It's loud on the internet. It's loud. It's loud. It's loud when you open your inbox. So many people blah, there's so much coming at you. So get quiet to listen to your own inner voice. And then listen. So it doesn't mean you have to do what it says immediately or it has to make sense. But once you get quiet enough to hear, you do have to actually listen and stop dismissing things so quickly because they don't make sense, or they're counter to your business plan, or so-and-so won't like you, or all these things. Is be willing to actually listen first. Write it all down or do whatever you need to do to give yourself the space so you can come back to it and make informed choices. But get quiet and then listen. So this goes back to the story I told about my website, which is, be willing to learn. There's tons of people out there who know way more about all kinds of things than I do. I have a woman who's going to help me with my social media presence because I just don't know jack shit about that. And I'm thrilled. I am thrilled for somebody who knows more than me to help me. And there's all kinds of things be willing, read the books, get suggestions, be willing to learn and change your mind. But in the end, trust your gut. So I would listen to my web developer and I would think about those things, but I would trust my gut. I would go I can't do that. I want to, he would give me other suggestions and I would say, yeah, that's great. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you thought of that. But this I can't do. In my gut, it goes, ugh. So don't do those things. Trust your gut. And I had somebody ask me the other day, how do you tell the difference between your intuition or your inner critic? How do you actually tell what's the voice of your intuition? And man, I wish I could remember who said this. Thanks, Erin. Nice to see you. Because this is brilliant, but it was a woman, and I wish I could remember. If I remember, I will absolutely give credit. But somebody asked her the same question or something similar. How do you tell? And she said, your intuition is not mean. And I was like, oh, I actually think it was Gurmukh. She's a Kundalini teacher. And I was studying with her. She said, your intuition is not mean. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't set boundaries or that some things aren't a no. It's not about like, oh, it's always like a big, open, sweet yes. But if you hear a voice inside you that's either criticizing, like pointing the finger out and saying like, no, 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 that's not your intuition. Also, if that finger is pointing at yourself and is saying like, what a piece of shit you are and how lame and you never do it right, that is not your intuition either. If that voice is talking that meanly to you, it is not your intuition. So get a little more quiet and listen to something deeper. In terms of the actual vision part, like that's the come home part, like make a regular practice of coming home. And from that place, make a regular practice of, you know, whether you do it writing or it's a visioning piece or it's some piece of expression that's about what do I want and what do I believe. And again, first let yourself want it and let yourself believe it before you dismiss things as like too petty or shallow or stupid or not good enough, or like let go of that voice for just at least, 5 to 10 minutes while I'm so glad, Paula. While you give that part of yourself that desires, that visions, that dreams, give it some space and let yourself also be willing to claim what I believe. I had one of the most powerful coaching sessions of my life. And this is a little side note for anyone who does like coaching or facilitation. So I had one of the most powerful coaching sessions of my life, and I have never worked with that coach since. So when people choose not to work with you, it doesn't mean anything. It might, but it might not. But I still remember this. So there are lots of beautiful things about it, but there was one moment where she was like, can I just say it like it is? And I was like, hell yeah, tell me exactly. And she said, Kendra, you have got to stop apologizing for what you believe in. And that has stayed with me now for about 3 years. It's almost 3 years ago that I had that conversation. So I now say this to you, like, stop apologizing for what you believe in. First and foremost, to yourself. So I invite you to let any of this percolate, take on any of these practices. I'll go back through the comments and see if there's places I missed, and continue to comment if you're watching this on the replay, and I'll be happy to come back through and either answer questions or clarify anything that wasn't clear. And but I also invite you, beyond or deeper than the rational or the part where any of this makes sense, like even just let this idea of come home to go big, like let that sink down into you. Let it wash over you like a warm, gentle rain, one of those East Coast summer rainstorms. Let it just wash over you and feel what gets lit up or inspired by taking on that frame, different than, any frame that's like go big or go home. This idea, come home to go big, and what comes up for you that may be very resonant with what I spoke to, and maybe your own awakening will come from it. So again, you can reach out to me here with questions, or if you have something that feels more private, you can send me a personal message or find me on my website, kendracunov.com. Thank you.